Hope sent A-Quiver. Written by OrionLady on AO3, read by Alextras. Chapter 23. Socks on the landing. Socks tucked inside shoes. Socks under the tennis racket. Socks on the lampshade. Clint rolled his eyes and threw these in the basket too, balanced on his hip. We're a family of rugrats. A trip down the stairs and into the entry hallway revealed more articles of discarded clothing, most of it belonging to Lila or Nate. Cooper had his own laundry hamper, and Peter was fastidious to a fault. Not a Nate. Clint again wondered if Peter would loosen up as time went on. He'd never wanted so badly to walk in and see a kid's room messy. Don't be impatient. Clint threw a pair of pink gym shorts with more force than necessary. Yeah, well, you try being understanding when Peter asks if he's allowed to have food, Nat. No matter how many times we tell him he can just take whatever snacks he wants. I'm ready to murder someone whenever he does that. It'll come. He trusts you all. The lodged breath eased in Clint's larynx, and he meandered into the kitchen with another huff. Socks on the blender this time. Guys, we can't keep chucking our stuff everywhere when we come in from playing outside. Guys? Clint glanced around the kitchen and living room. Not a soul. He blinked and called up to the second floor. Cooper? Lila? A moot exercise, since he'd just been upstairs in everyone's rooms gathering laundry and hadn't seen anyone. Even Peter wasn't up in his room reading. Clint checked a mental calendar. Saturday night, 7 p.m, no sports or matches, no playdates, no hangouts with friends. Maybe they'd gone outside to play another game of pickup soccer. That or congregated in the treehouse. Dad! Lila's head appeared around the basement door. You're late. We've been waiting for you for like 20 minutes. He did a double take at her. Late? For what? Movie night. It's Saturday, Clint protested, already setting down the hamper. Lila grinned when she took his hand and dragged him to the stairs. My pick was last night. Yeah, and we're never watching Master and Commander again. Hey, it's a good movie. Lila made a face. The guy had to stitch himself up using a mirror, Dad. So unrealistic and gross. Clint deigned to omit the fact that he'd been forced to do that exact medical procedure after a mission in Kiev once. Suddenly, the words caught up into his brain. Wait, movie night? Whose pick? Clint ducked to see into the rec room and steadied himself around Lila's yanking. The teens took up one couch, Nathaniel on Cooper's lap, while Laura lounged in the dish chair with a glass of wine. Clint made a mental note to buy more furniture, with their family expanding a fourth time. There you are! Nate clapped his hands. It's Petey's pick on Saturdays now, Dad. New tradition. Tradition, Cooper corrected. Clint met Laura's eyes and she raised her Pinot Noir in a silent toast. Your idea? He mouthed. Laura shook her head and pointed to Lila. Of course, Nate, man. Clint headed to the popcorn maker in the corner and fired it up. Silly me. What are we watching? Everyone turned to Peter. Lila let go of Clint to rejoin her siblings on the couch. Peter sandwiched between them. He squirmed in his too big hoodie, Clint's hoodie, and too big jeans his Rubik's Cube hip bones had yet to grow into. Anything you pick is okay, sweetie, Laura reassured him, so long as it's mostly clean for little eyes and ears. Movie nights mean we watch whatever you want. Peter studied them all in a lazy Susan circle of the room, especially Lila cuddled up next to him and Nate's feet by his knee. He licked his lips and looked studiously at their shelf of boxed set collections on either side of the TV in place of their eyes. Is the sound of music okay? The Bartons shared a flashed look of shock. They had all braced themselves for a sci-fi title, maybe a Star Wars marathon type request. Even a fantasy movie would have astonished Clint less. Sure, Peter. Clint leaned around to see him better. We can do that. I haven't seen this in ages. Laura flipped through their streaming services as the designated keeper of any and all remotes. I'd love to watch it again. I've never seen this movie, Lila confessed. Cooper adjusted Nate when he wriggled in anticipation. The part with the Nazis is pretty good. And there are Nazis in The Sound of Music? For real? Lila accepted the bowl of popcorn Clint passed over the back of the couch. I thought this was a musical. It is. Do they sing about hating Nazis? Clint passed another bowl to Peter. Kinda. It's a classic for a reason. You like this movie, Pete? Peter nodded, apple-cheeked. Seen it at least 7 times. Wow! Clint signed and said it, flapping his fingers. 8th time, here we go. Laura stood to dim the lights with their home theatre switch on the back wall. Sensing an opportunity, Clint ran to the dish chair and stole her spot amidst a chorus of Nate and Lila's giggles over the start of Julie Andrews running up the mountain. Laura put her hands on her hips. That's how it's going to be, is it? Now I know where the kids get their thieving ways. There's room for 2, Clint wheedled. Laura exaggerated her skepticism, eyebrows a waggle. I don't know. Clint tugged her sideways across his knees. We can share. Laura murmured a laugh and kissed Clint's cheek, arms twined around his neck. She settled against his shoulder to watch the movie, his arms bracketed around her sides to keep her secure in place. Ugh. Lila rolled her eyes and elbowed Peter with a confident squint. Mum and Dad are super gross with the PDA sometimes, I should warn you. All kissy, Nate agreed. Peter just nodded, eyes curious on the pair. Clint watched his kids more than the movie, the way Lila hummed along, off-key as the firm contender of worst singer in this family, and Nate's eyes turned to twin moons at the big dance numbers. He fell into another peeling fit of giggles when Maria sat on a pine cone thanks to the Von Trapp kids' enthusiastic shenanigans. Clint's lips twitched. This family dynamic seems familiar. Shh! All the Bartons shushed him. Cooper kept leaning over to swap WW2 history facts with Peter, and he in turn kept up a stream of movie trivia about the film. By the time the ballroom party scene rolled around with its promised Nazi sympathizers, Nate had crawled into Peter's lap, Cooper tilted sideways and asleep on his shoulder. Peter held himself deathly still to avoid waking either of the boys. Something in his eyes buzzed, an electric tension that threw sparks into the night. Something like trepidation and happiness all rolled into one. Lila guzzled popcorn at a steady pace, surprising considering she wasn't much of a night owl, preferring to go to bed early and be up early. Then again, Cooper's exams had run longer than hers yesterday. Nate snuggled into Peter's sweater front, and Peter hitched him closer, nose in his downy locks. He kissed Nate's forehead with unfathomable reverence, like it was the key to be everything dear in the world that had ever been and ever would be. Clint's eyes brightened. Care for a dance, Mr. Barton? Laura held out her hand. Thought you'd never ask. Clint memorized one more glance at the couch and then rose, sweeping Laura into a half waltz. She winked, left hand on his shoulder, right nestled into his supporting grip. Clint Barton might be an outdoorsman through and through, but he'd gone undercover at some highbrow soirees in his day. The boxy footwork came back to him like clockwork, though he was pleased to be wearing a t-shirt and jeans instead of a full tuxedo. The song on screen wasn't exactly made for dancing, but he'd never felt so fulfilled, and Laura had never looked so proud. They swayed around the empty swatch of floor behind the couch, steps muted in the carpet. Perhaps I had a wicked childhood. Perhaps I had a miserable youth. Julie Andrews sang on, and so did Clint's heart, a ballad only 5 other people could hear. Peter? Lila swallowed around a mouthful of popcorn. Why do you like this movie so much? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's really good. But it's not the kind of movie my friends pick when I ask for their favourite. Peter met her eyes. My family used to watch it every Christmas Eve, when I was little. Lila blinked. Oh, Sorry I asked. No, it's okay. Pete bundled Nate closer to his chest. My Uncle Ben loved this musical. Would pick it every Christmas and always promised we'd go see it live someday. Laura rested her head on Clint's shoulder, perfumed with rosewater conditioner and that lavender face lotion she always used. Lay it over that scent uniquely Laura. Clint savoured her hair's waves across the sandy shore of his cheek, an undulation and a promise. There must have been a moment of truth, for here you are, standing there, loving me. Lila took Peter's hand. Thanks for telling me. Ben sounds like a cool guy. Peter studied the point of contact. After a moment, once Lila had gone back to watching Fraulein Maria and the captain sing to each other on screen, Peter reciprocated, thumb unbent and curled across Lila's knuckles. He was. Peter looked over his unused shoulder at their parents. My aunt and uncle used to dance like that at this exact same part. Then I'm glad we're watching this movie now, said Lila, eyes intent on the screen. Though I'm not sure it's the same or as special as the other 7 times. Peter and Clint just gazed at each other, packed with more than their words could possibly express. How had the days felt normal before Pete came along? How had Clint gotten through with an incomplete family? Somehow, life from before didn't feel as authentic as this. Peter reached for the camera none of them had noticed hidden by his hip and snuck a non-flash photo of Laura and Clint with one hand, since Cooper was out and drooling against Peter's left shoulder. Just one picture that probably featured Clint grinning like an idiot and Laura with those soft mother's eyes. She rubbed Clint's shoulder and marveled at the scene along with him. All of their 4 kids in one place, huddled together in a cuddle pile and happy and whole. No more bruises marred Peter's skin, and the bones had receded in his cheekbones, long fought for, and his curls were freshly washed and shiny, and he breathed free of pain or broken bones, and instead of a dead fog, his eyes gleamed with energy and life and emotion. Subtle emotion. Peter's eyes at half-mast, not out of fatigue, but nostalgia, and a burgeoning something Clint took an extra second to decode. Out of love? Love. Real love, without blemish. Actually, Peter whispered, I think this time is my favourite. I must have done something good. Laura yawned and stretched, moonlight behind her closed lids. She reached across for Clint's side of the bed and patted cool, empty sheets. Alarm didn't blare through her at the absence, since she'd woken alone more times than she could count. The day she married Clint, this was part of their vows, to be patient when the other person had to do things on their own sometimes. His life would never be ordinary, neither had hers, once upon a time. Then, thwick, 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 steps padded by in the hallway. On the ceiling. Laura's eyes flew open. She checked her beloved shield watch on the side table, 2:18 a.m., and slipped on her bathrobe. Quietly as she could, she poked her head out. A silhouette dropped onto the stairs from above and walked normally the rest of the way. She gave him a minute before heading downstairs. Well, she didn't have superpowers, she was in better health than the object of her pursuit, and made it into the kitchen just in time to see Clint, asleep on the couch with a stack of paperwork in front of him on the coffee table, and Peter, who hesitated before crawling into Clint's lap. Laura's whole body sagged on the doorframe at the simple sight of this teenager being careful with her husband as he rearranged his legs off the side and his ear over Clint's chest. Peter sagged too, instant relief. He nestled into the soft cotton of Clint's hoodie. Clint slept through the whole thing. He had hung towards his chest so his chin ended up in Peter's hair. Peter could curl up in ways that mystified Laura, reducing himself to half his size. She shuffled her feet so they made lots of noise approaching the couch. You like the sound of his heartbeat too? Peter nodded, Bambi eyes gazing up at her. Heard it racing down here. Laura fell onto the cushion next to him, dumbfounded. You you can hear everyone's heartbeat in this house, even the kids upstairs. Peter nodded. Laura blew her bangs off her forehead. Wow, okay. Clint had really undersold that super hearing thing. They'd done their best to coax out details of Peter's physiology since last week's adoption announcement, always as gentle as they could manage. While he didn't mind showing Spider-Man related abilities or athleticism, he cleaned out their rain gutters from the roof in 10 minutes. He was terribly shy when it came to talking about how his body functioned. Laura and Clint attributed this to times when it had failed him in saving people and how he'd been beaten while homeless. Being small, light, and powerless against people twice his height during this time had traumatized him in ways he couldn't fully verbalize yet. Laura palmed Peter's ankle where the sweatpants rode up. "You're a wonder, Pete. I'm just so relieved your ribs and face mended okay, now that we know about the fast healing." Peter went bashful, like he always did when this came up. His toes curled into the cushion by Laura's leg. "I bet you could lift this couch one-handed, Clint included." Peter wavered his hand in a so-so motion. "Strength's not back yet. I can't feel bad stuff before it happens either." "That's okay. Those powers will return as you work up to bigger meals." Laura's fingers skimmed his Achilles. "I, for one, am glad you've chosen to just be Peter for a while." Peter rocked his thumb and pinky with a matching smile. "Me too." "Is it still racing?" Peter shook his head and pressed his ear tighter to Clint, though he didn't need to. "He's in REM sleep now. Dreaming." Their eyes fell on the source of that racing, the paperwork CPS and Hill had mailed. Dietary concerns, suggested therapy options, iron supplement dosages, medication protocols once they were prescribed. "You nervous about the shield doctor coming to the house tomorrow? Or today, I guess?" Peter played with the drawstring on Clint's hoodie. "Sort of." "We're staying with you for the entire examination," Laura repeated. She'd remind him of it 10,000 times if she had to. "You'll never be left alone again, Peter. The doctor isn't going to hurt you. No one is going to hurt you, and will stop at any point if you ask. I know Dr. Blore. He's the best." Peter nodded. Laura sensed she hadn't quite hit the nail on the head with this one. Am I causing Clint stress?" Peter's hand clenched in his own shirt. "Making things harder for you guys?" Laura switched, so she held his hand instead. "No, baby. Do you know why Clint's heart rate was so elevated tonight? Why he got up to read over this file?" She had Peter's full attention, hanging off her words. The weight of this boy and his inner light's trust settled around Laura, heavy and comforting. "He's excited." Peter's grip went limp. "Excited?" "Yes, to finally be able to help you in the way that you need, for your specific makeup. He's also excited because this doctor's appointment completes it in a way. You're on a record as an official, permanent part of our family. It was probably a bit angry, too, at how you've been treated." Peter hid his face in Clint's chest for a beat, then braved the affection in Laura's eyes to meet them. "Laura?" The sound of her name from his songbird voice sent butterfly wings up her stomach and into her head, a wonderful brand of dizziness. She wanted to hear it 100 times more, every day. And the best part? Now she could. Now she'd hear 4 voices calling on their way in for supper. She kissed his palm. "Yeah?" "I haven't had a place to let go in a long time, where I don't have to keep an ear out to protect people, knowing someone will catch me. Didn't even have that before the blip." Laura rested her head sideways on the back of the couch, to be at the boy's eye level. They just gazed at each other for a moment. Clint shifted in his sleep, chin swiveling so his cheek rested on Peter's head. A curl tangled in Clint's eyelash. "And now?" Laura asked. Peter closed his eyes, face full of concentration. Laura wished she could hear the things he did, Their children's heartbeats, hens outside, furnace popping, that drip in the downstairs sink that Clint had been meaning to fix, the mobile, Randy the raccoon in his quest to infiltrate their barn. Peter opened his eyes. Now I'm home. Bare feet on his counter this time instead of ballet shoes. That and a grey, grease-stained tank top that revealed a char-free right arm. Smooth. No scars, no burns or element-infused gouges. What happened to frozen yogurt? Please. Tony threw back another handful of M&Ms from a paper bag. I hate that much brain freeze. No offence, Tash. The sound of a music box filtered through the dim kitchen for a few bars. Clint glanced around, but no sign of her appeared. Not at the table or the blurry periphery of his dream vision. He hopped up on the bar stool, elbows by Stark's leg. Did you know it's a 4-hour bus ride from Queens to the state line? Asked Tony. Clint stole a few M&Ms. They didn't taste like anything either, though there were funky colours thrown in that he'd never seen the brand sell, like neon purple and shiny gold and some sort of forest green thing. What is it with people telling me random facts? I can't get rid of you dweebs even when I sleep. From there, it's an even 15 hours to where you are, by Greyhound. Tony ignored him and kept talking. Title of his biography, rights pending. Of course, it takes longer if you stop for odd jobs, to clean tables for a bit or rake some leaves. Then it would take around a month. Those 23 days were agony, Clint. Tony paused, and his hair ruffled even with a zero wind in this not kitchen. Clint felt it too, a jet stream wisp along his bare arms. Sorry. Tony refocused on Clint. Some people retain their powers even when they're gone, especially if they die using them. Bonkers, right? Maximoff still runs like it's going out of style. Then again, if that weren't true, I wouldn't have retained my awesome genius brain, and no world can live without that. Clint sighed, full of love for him too, even after everything. No, we can't, but we're trying. Doing a bang-up job. You're caring for him better than most people have. Tony went from rambling to laser-focused in a blink. I would have steered the kid to a different set of woods if you weren't. Tony didn't technically have to breathe in this liminal space, but Clint did. He stuttered over an inhale. You're the reason, Peter. So, here's what I'm thinking. And Tony was always thinking, constant of the universe. Instead of that black marble vanity you want to surprise Laura with in the Parisian bathroom, how about some cast iron elements? That way it echoes the Eiffel Tower without being so dark. She wants stage mirror bulbs over the sink. Yeah, but the black marble's still gonna bring down the lighting. So will iron. Okay, then what about granite? Lots of colour options. Nobody respectable puts a granite sink in their bathroom. Clint blinked at himself, arguing with Tony over bathroom fixtures. And anyhow, you've never remodeled a bathroom in your life. I fixed lots of bathrooms. Yes, you did. My shower head water pressure thanks you. That drip in the downstairs sink is due to a lack of seal pressure in some of the plumbing. An easy fix, just so you know. Oh, yeah. Clint threw him a dry look like the ones they always shared over darts. Games played what felt like eons ago. I'll get right on that in my myriad of free time. I've got bigger things to invest in right now. Tony ate one last handful of candy and leaned his head back on the cupboard. His mouth pinched at the edges of his goatee. Bring him home for me. I already have, Tony. Peter would do better with someone who could keep up with his insatiable brain, like you. I'm a consolation prize, but he's not alone anymore. Tony shook his head. You're wrong about that. He doesn't need stimulation as much as he needs normal. I got that wrong for so long with him. He needs to learn to be a kid, Clint. Something no one ever bothered to teach him, and that's why he's got a middle-aged man's trauma in a stunted body. I'm teaching him. You're the best I know. For the first time in one of these dreams, someone touched Clint. Tony's hand settled on Clint's chest, right between the heart shape of his ribs in an arcane weight that seemed to encompass the world and the tragic, breathtaking beauty of one person reaching out to another person. It tingled like radio static, like cosmic dust. And you're not alone either. Never have been and never will be. A hand jostled Clint's chest. The touch absorbed layers of aches and pains Clint wasn't even aware he carried around, filling his lungs with purer oxygen, like he only saw life in slow snapshots and Tony gave him a glimpse of a film reel, full frame rate. Gravity's heavy effects lightened. He felt scars on his body dissolve, if only for this one brief recherche moment. And his heartbeat matched Tony's. Something in the air tingled too. Does it all make sense in the end? Tony pulsed brighter. More than you can ever imagine. With every last bit of it. We only see the back of the tapestry while alive. A part of the whole. And that only through the dirty glass we call reality. Clint breathed out, and it sounded like wind through his crops, like crickets chirping at sunset, like his children's snuffly breaths when they fell asleep. Tony matched the sigh, only his sounded like fireworks and an engine purring. Ambition, bank accounts, achievements, none of it really matters. Only the way we loved and received love lasts. Clint's very hair seemed to stand on end. He caught an intense flare of something in Stark's eyes, some inner lighthouse he never had while alive. You're going to be all right, Tony. The mechanic smiled, all teeth and those earnest laugh lines, and somehow Clint sensed he wasn't going to see him or Natasha again for a very long time. That this was his stop. Tony looked past Clint with a look so tender it could knock the earth off its axis. It pretty much had, travelling through time. Better than ever, babe. Your hugging services are needed, though. Hold 'em tight for me. Harder jostle. Before Clint stood up, he looked in the M&M bag and saw fireflies? No, not fireflies. Specks that ratioed into full pictures whenever they got close to the top. Pepper's beaming face by candlelight, saturated with love. Jarvis telling a bedtime story. A woman's fingers at the piano. Peter laughing so hard his nose scrunched. Peter bent over a lab table with goggles on and those unruly curls and a bush around his eyes. Memories. Beloved memories glowing warm and orange. That signature heat swept through the room again, weighed down to Clint's joints. Maybe this was what was really in Nat's frozen yogurt tub too. Thank you, Tony, for everything. You didn't find those adoption papers by accident, you know. Clint smiled. I'm sure I didn't. He looked up and met Tony's eyes, and cosmic dust swirled in them too. Galaxies neither Clint nor any other living human had seen before, full of unabashed, intimate, agape love. Over Tony's irises layered the shine of spiral galaxies and nebulae. They pulled in time with the fingers on Clint's chest. It's all right, Clint. Everything's going to be okay, and the fight is done for you. Go, be with your family. The hand tapped his pecs in Morse code. Wake up. Clint's mouth buzzed with the sound of his own voice, but the world remained underwater. Crap, my hearing aid. He opened his eyes to see Laura's hand on him in the dark. She looked at his chest and signed a P next to her forehead, like a curl. Peter. Clint sat up and grabbed his aid off the bedside table, sliding it in, the sounds of Laura's whispers. Clint, honey, we have a visitor. And June crickets out the open window banished the last of the blurry images. And soft footfalls. Clint's sharp eyes saw him better than Laura could. Peter, you okay? Peter squirmed on his toes by their closet. Laura stayed down to reduce their combined profile, not wanting to scare him, her hand clenching on Clint's shirt. Clint could relate to the sentiment. Peter had never sought out refuge in their room, no matter how many times they offered since the adoption. Peter inched towards Clint's side of the bed, and he stood up. I don't have to... bad, Bad dream, Pete. Peter nodded. About the snap, getting dusted, and how it felt. Clint's heart ached for him. The memories he'd shared that 4 a.m. night at the lake house, eating a grilled cheese. I'm so sorry, Peter. You want to talk about it? No. Staunch as a Supreme Court judge. I just want a hug. Clint obliged him at once in a quick embrace. Quick, because Peter's body flexed in Clint's arms about as much as a suspension bridge, tense from the nightmare. The boy's hand, however, latched onto the front of Clint's shirt like a drugged dog. Come here, baby. Laura scooted over at once. You can sleep with us tonight. Peter startled at the action. No, it's okay. You both need sleep. I can just go back to my room and... Clint lifted Peter clean off his feet with one arm around the back of his knees and the other around his shoulders in a bridal carry. Peter didn't let go of Clint's shirt, going so far as to rest his head on Clint's shoulder. He counted that as another win. It reassured him again that while Pete would never weigh more than 120 pounds, lighter than Cooper and Lila, a lot of it was due to his altered spider genetics, that hollow exoskeleton effect, not just starvation. Clint and Laura had read Dr. Blaw's assessment after the appointment thoroughly and gone over every single detail of Peter's physiognomy, what stats like temperature and blood pressure to expect as normal for him, the extent of his anemia. Clint cradled Peter in his arms all the way to the bed, where he settled his son in the little hollow between their bodies. Even here, he fit like he was designed for it. Then Clint arranged the covers over all three of them and laid down facing Laura, Pete's back to his chest. Tight muscles in Peter's shoulders and limbs granulated into the mattress, bones turned to noodles. Clint wrapped an arm around him and patted his stomach. Go to sleep, Pete. We've got you. Laura kissed Peter's nose before she dozed off again. Wake us if you need, Bug. Peter hummed. His eyes drooped, and he laid his head on Clint's pillow. Clint kept himself awake until he felt Peter's stomach push at his hand in a full, deep breath. Slower, too, evening out. Clint? Clint whispered back to keep Laura asleep. Yeah. Tony says marble black is stupid. It's very important you remember that, he said. Clint planted a smirking kiss next to Pete's ear, so chock full of tenderness and peace and contentment it bubbled out in a quiet laugh. Oh, he did he? Mm-hmm. He likes the croissant-themed towels you bought her as a gift, though. Clint's eyes shot open in the dark. Shock was the appropriate emotion here, that Peter knew something that Clint had never told him. But he'd travelled through time and fought aliens. This wasn't even a blip on the insanity radar. I'll take care of him, Tony. All of him. He's still our kid under the heartache of what happened. Peter's fingers closed around Clint's hand on his diaphragm. His knees bent so he was arched back, sponging up the body heat and affection. His right hand tapped in a familiar shape, pinky, thumb, and index finger extended, that he also said out loud, I love you, Clint. Clint fell asleep with tears in his eyes and their boy in his arms. Love you too, Peter. Always. Over their heads, the mobile ticked away. Finn. End of chapter and end of fic. I'm sorry if I got a little choked up sounding there around his conversation with Tony, but I genuinely almost started crying. I really can't tell you how much this fic means to me. It's one that I come to when I need comfort, when I need to feel something cozy. It's an all-time favourite, and I am so grateful that I've been allowed to share it with you in my own method, even if it might be a bit inconsistent at times. I know Peter's voice changed about 50 times through the one fic. I do apologise for all that, but I've been learning through doing a long-term fic like this, and I do feel like I learned a lot. Thank you again, OrionLady, for allowing me to do a narration, a podfic for this. And to all of you who are maybe listening and who may feel like being kind, please head over to the original fic and leave them kudos and comments and every kind thing under the sun. It would really mean a lot to me if you did, I know that at least, and I'm sure it would mean a lot to them. The link for that fic will be somewhere on the screen or in the description of wherever you might be listening. Thank you so much again for listening and coming on this journey with me. Have a great day or night or whatever it may be for you. Bye bye.